This is the Decision Point with Anand and Nanduri. And Anand, it's been a few weeks. There's been some news. There's been some players released. There's contract talk. There's injury talk. There's talk. Lots of talk. So let's talk. Let's talk first and foremost about DeAndre Hopkins. He's been released. There's now news, rumor circulating that some front offices, some general managers believe that he can no longer separate, that he can't move fast any longer, and that he is dust. So now there are rumors that he is dust. Where do you see Hopkins landing? Do you think he's dust? Talk to us.
I don't think he's dust. I think that's overblowing what you saw in a shortened season where he was coming off of, the suspension and there was a little bit of lingering injury. Sure, as you age towards 30 and beyond for wide receivers, we know that for most guys, that's kind of the cutoff point for where your production starts to either slow or declines drastically. But we're not talking about a regular wide receiver here. We're talking about a guy that has won via contested catch, that's won via being a premier route runner in the league. There's all kinds of ways DeAndre Hopkins can win for you. And I think the strangest part about this is that it came as a shock to people that he was released. Really what put the nail in the coffin here was Odell Beckham signing the deal that he did with the Ravens, because it forced Arizona's hand in the sense of DeAndre wasn't going to rework his contract for them to be able to get something back for him below that $15 million a year number. And teams saw the writing on the wall. Arizona needed to pre-June 1 cut him and take that entire cap hit this year because they don't want to push anything into 2024. They have no business competing in 2023. It's why they made this move to begin with. They ate all of the money this year, saved $7 million, I think it was, against the cap. But
was a $20 million contract, right? $20 million?
I think the number on paper was something like $30 million. He was owed like $19 million in cash, and for some reason his hit was 23, somewhere in there. But basically,
right? It was 20 plus 3. That was the actual consequence. So right,
but the biggest winner here, without question, is Hopkins. There is nothing like being available on the free market and essentially choosing, do you want to go to the highest bidder, which may not be the best team? You may be looking at a Chicago Bears that have a lot of cap space. You may be looking at Carolina with some cap space. Or is your goal to maximize your opportunity to win and go to a Kansas City, a Buffalo, potentially a Baltimore if they're willing to pony up again? I think it's really important for him to consider. You don't know how many years of being an elite wide receiver you have left. So ideally, it's probably best if you go somewhere where you can operate as a number 2, even if you're really still a 1. And so I think Buffalo is probably the best situation for him in the sense that they've never shown a commitment to running the ball consistently. They know those targets have to go somewhere. That's probably the best match of quarterback, offensive coordinator, head coach alignment in terms of, hey, these targets have to go to somebody. Let's get them to DeAndre Hopkins. Whereas if you're the Chiefs, you'd love to have them. But again, we saw them win last year without that true number 1 at wide receiver. And so it's not as much of a necessity for them as he is for Buffalo. I think he really moves the needle for the Bills in terms of what they can do this year and next year. So I think that's the number 1 team if you're looking for someone to come in and scoop him up at a reasonable number for, maybe 15, 16 million a year, probably a rather incentive-laden deal to finally give Diggs that number 2 option that we so desperately wanted Beasley and Gabriel Davis and several others who have been in there to be. You know what you're going to get out of him. And I think that has a lot more value to Buffalo than drafting someone, in the second, third round again.
He's made $100 million in his career.
It's a lot of money.
Right? So he signed a 5-year, $81 million contract with $50 million guaranteed for his second contract. Then they did a restructure, which was another $60 million guaranteed halfway through that deal. So you back it out and you subtract some in the last 2 years and you add the 60. It's $100 million. It's $100 million. What is he thinking taking any phone calls from any teams that aren't massive, surefire contenders for a championship. I don't understand that. I never will. He doesn't need the money. He does need a ring. Go to Kansas City and have fun. Life doesn't have to be hard.
The other team that I think is not getting discussed a lot here is the Chargers. You know, if you really look at how these AFC teams are trying to build themselves, Baltimore is built to grind people into paste, right? It's very much the Eagles model. They just don't have the wide receivers to give Lamar what Jalen Hurts has gotten. But functionally, the identity is the same. We're going to wear you down over time with our run game and eventually hope to hit something over the top. The difference between that and what Cincinnati's doing, which is basically, hey, we're going to throw the ball whether you want us to throw it or not, because you don't have three better corners than our three receivers. I think if the Chargers decide to tap into more of the Bengals side of things, and I think they will under Kellen Moore, I think what you'll see is the addition of a Hopkins that gives them the flexibility if there were to be another injury to a Keenan Allen. You have DeAndre Hopkins as that number 3 option. I think that's another one that you could see that's really interesting, but really every AFC contender not named Cincinnati should be calling. And I think they, for the most part, I think they have.
What about NFC contenders? Like I talked about the Eagles. You know who the number 3 receiver is? Quez Watkins, right? And injuries happen every year. The probability is very high that one of your 2 starting receivers is going to miss 3 to 4 games. That's just every year, every team. Ending the year with 2 receivers that played 17 games is a very rare thing. So you should be bolstering your receiving core. If you're the Chargers, I love that idea. He's a massive upgrade over Quentin Johnston and or Josh Palmer. And we know that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are now well past the age apex. And that, you know, I think Mike Williams may have missed more games due to injury in his career than Keenan Allen. It's certainly close, and he is a 1-for-1 analog for Mike Williams. He's a little bit older, and he's better, so it's a wash, right? I think the sneaky places to go would be Philadelphia. I think it's a no-brainer for them to bring him in and just try to take as many risks off the table as possible. A risk to an injury to Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, is something that could hurt their Super Bowl chances. So why even entertain it? Take that probability off the board. Take that risk away. If you're Detroit, this is the year you're being taken seriously. You're opening against the Chiefs, and you just had your starting receiver suspended in Jameson Williams. So why not find a true X receiver that can win on 3rd and 8? They need that guy badly. They don't have that guy. They've got a slot flanker, an elite slot flanker in Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got an elite field stretcher in Jameson Williams. They do not have a true X receiver for inside the 20 and on 3rd and 8. That's the DeAndre Hopkins sweet spot. The Lions have no one like that, so they could really use him. I do not believe that DeAndre Hopkins is dust. He has 1 more year left. The advanced metrics on Player Profiler tell you the story of what's going on with him. That last year, he got the most cushion of any wide receiver, 5.7 yards of cushion. So defenses were respecting him too much because his target separation of 1.77 ranked number 46. He was winning anyway because of the cushion and because he's DeAndre Hopkins. 51.8% route win rate and 47% win rate against man. Those were both top 5. So he is getting open. He is winning in contested situations, and he's figuring it out. He has about another year left to play at a high level with that kind of clasher X receiver game before it starts to become very difficult to make dynamic plays, but I still think he has a year left. So those general managers that are calling him dust, that saying that he can't move anymore, they are wrong. They're not looking at the right numbers. They're doing some classic front office eye testing.
It's overthinking the obvious.
Yeah, it's like
super
this type of player who is 6'1", 215, He is the prototypical size for a wide receiver of his era. And these players, whether it be Roddy White, I mean, you can go down the list of players that are they play well. Age 31, then 32, things start to go the wrong direction. 33, they're out of the league by 34. This is the year that Hopkins is going to give you that one final, that one job, that one last job, that one run, that one final run, and it's all there for him. Go to a contender and make it happen, DeAndre.
There's one that gets left off the list that I think we should talk about because nobody has brought this up yet, or at least not that I've seen. If you are serious and if you want to be taken seriously, and the two teams that we talk about that have to take that step this year to go from really fun stories, and you took a step last year, we need you to take the step this year. We talked about Detroit. If he somehow lands in Jacksonville and we get a wide receiver room of Hopkins, Ridley, and Kirk, I think that takes them from a place of, we're really excited to see this team get to the divisional round again, maybe push for the conference championship, into, hey, you might really have something here in this receiver room. This could be a really special trio in Jacksonville. That's a really fun fit.
Right, because Zay Jones is the current third receiver, and Zay Jones is one of those cardboard cutout average receivers. I mean, he had a handful of 10-plus target games last year, but Zay Jones is an explosive slot flanker. He's been a late bloomer. He's going to give you 900 yards. That's what he is. Christian Kirk played above expectation last year. He's not a true number one. Calvin Ridley was never a true number one. You have three good, not great players that are excellent number twos. Wow. Would DeAndre Hopkins fit well in that offense? And then Zay Jones moves to your number 4 receiver. He comes in and can fill in for any of those guys when there's an injury. Wow, that's a great one. That's my favorite one. That's a great one. See, the thing is, you're on an Nanduri, and I'm not, and no one is, because most people think, oh, well, they have Calvin Ridley. They signed Calvin Ridley to be that guy. Yeah, but they also lost Marvin Jones. Right? So Marvin Jones is gone. Ridley's in. That's a replacement. That's an upgrade on Marvin Jones, given their age. Sure. But they're not really adding a dynamic playmaker to the mix. They add a 4th dynamic playmaker. Now we're talking. Because, again, DeAndre Hopkins has slowed down. He's not separating like he did. But defenses still respect him, and he does have dynamism. So that's his demise has been overblown. The demise of Dalvin Cook appears to be overblown. He has not yet been moved. Every second that ticks by, he becomes more and more likely to be a Viking. Alan Sislowski on the Sonic Truth podcast believes that Dalvin Cook will restructure. What do you say?
I agree with him, mainly because of what happened with Austin Eckler. I think those two guys, if they're, that they fielded calls. I am sure the Vikings and the Chargers fielded calls from teams and created a market for themselves of what Eckler and Cook are worth. And obviously you have a little more injury concern with one than the other, but relatively speaking, valuating them, they're very similar players in terms of how much they would get paid, what they'd be worth on the open market. I think the fact that he was able to find middle ground and come back makes it more likely that Dalvin does the same. The question is, how long can they really hold on to these jobs? The really strange part about the running back market at this point is you get your 5-year rookie window, your 4 or 5-year rookie window. There's potentially a second contract if you're a really good football player, which both of them are. But at the end of that second contract, can you be worth what they're paying you? And for the most part, the answer has been your 4-year deal turns into a 2-year deal, turns into a 2+1. And we're probably looking at the last year for both Eckler and for Cook. But I do think he ends up back in Minnesota just this 1 year.
Yes, he does. Alexander Mattison, overrated in fantasy football. Probably the most overrated running back in all of fantasy football has to be Alexander Mattison. Evan Ingram is not reporting to voluntary OTAs. However, the days of NFL players actually holding out, given the latest collective bargaining agreement, are over, correct?
Yeah, at this point, they're holding in. They'll show up to whatever events are necessary and, obviously avoid the fines. But it's kind of in the fine print, and everybody knows. Teams know, coaches know, the owner knows, front office knows. Everybody's aware of what's going on when these hold-ins happen. But the only difference between the holdouts of the past and the holdouts now are the fact that they show up for off-season training programs occasionally, and they show up to mini camp. Like, it's really not there. There's not a world of difference between the two. Just one, you see them in team colors a little more often.
There's no holding out anymore because of the new fine structure that was implemented in the last collective bargaining agreement made it impossible to hold out.
Yeah.
You go bankrupt.
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So that's basically what happened. Was they said, listen, even practices, right? Even mandatory practices, the fines have escalated to a point where it makes sense. If you're the equity holders of these teams and have one player holding the team hostage for the entire offseason, that's an inequitable amount of power for that one player. So I do understand why they prioritize that in the latest collective bargaining, but it's also very typical of the players' union to just cave and allow ownership to get more and more powerful with every CBA that gets done.
Yeah, the next one is probably also going to involve an 18th game and a second bye week. I think that's definitely coming.
100%. You think they're going to stick at 17 games for very long?
No, it was the super strange thing. You remember when right before the Texans were announced as an expansion franchise, where the AFC Central had like 6 or 7 teams? It was just the weirdest, most chaotic, organized, divisions anyone's ever seen. And we're all sitting there knowing, there's eventually going to be that 32nd team, much like that. We all know a 20-week, 18-game, 2-bye-week season is coming, if not only for owners in terms of profits, if not only the second bye week in terms of players getting rest and getting a better product, but also in terms of promoting the international games that you're seeing announced now before even the domestic schedule gets announced. All of that travel and stuff involved there is probably going to lead to just that.
The extra bye week also extends the season, which is great for the equity holders. Again, they always win. They can say like, oh, this is for the players. It's also for you. You win when you win, and when you lose, you also win. Jimmy Garoppolo. Could his contract be voided if his foot is not healthy?
Yeah, he has to pass a team physical, which is a lot different than passing a league physical. The league has its own parameters where it determines, the NFLPA will obviously take Garoppolo's side on this, but the team physical itself, right? This is not the scouting combine in Indianapolis. The Raiders have specific things that they're looking for that when you agreed to sign that contract, agreed to. And because he couldn't pass a physical at the time that he signed, they added that clause in there where his contract can be voided if he does not pass a physical by a certain date. I can't remember what the exact date is. But if he doesn't pass a physical by that certain date, they can void his entire contract, which is both parts strange. Yes, this happens, but it really doesn't happen to high profile players. And it certainly doesn't happen to franchise quarterbacks like this.
Ever.
It is really, really unique circumstance here because you normally don't pick up a guy in free agency that you're committing tens of millions of dollars to who can't pass a physical. All of this is really weird and, kind of a one-off circumstance, but yeah, truly, if they want to get out and he doesn't pass a physical, they can completely void the contract in its whole.
They can't get out though. I mean, they can't, even if he doesn't pass, who cares? You can't cut him. You're Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell are next in line. Otherwise, you might as well cut Davante Adams. What's the point of having Davante Adams if you have Aiden O'Connell under center? Then you're going for Caleb Williams. Then you shouldn't have Davante Adams playing a snap. It doesn't make any sense.
It
would be like DeAndre Hopkins playing a snap for Arizona. They know what the game is. They know what their goals are for next year. winning a game because of DeAndre Hopkins only hurts them.
And the Raiders, I'm not sure, have accepted that yet, because they're still talking about, adding players here and adding players there.
Well, you've got to make a decision. Either they're trying to shed as much salary and quality of play among their veterans as possible and going for the first pick, or they're in for this year. It's one of the two, Anand. This is probably our perpetual frustration with these teams, is they're trying to have it both ways. They can't make a decision on which way they want to go. The Arthur Blank corollary.
Yep, they're right? Atlanta. It's the same thing all over again.
Every year.
You have really good pieces.
Oh, wow, I think one more year of Matt Ryan. No, Arthur, you can't. No, what?
Yeah, this is the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Atlanta Falcons. It's blown up 2 years too late.
This is what it is.
They're going to find themselves in that spot too.
They can't do this.
Especially
if
in that
they are
division.
In that Arthur Blank mindset, they have to hold on to Garoppolo. They can't let him. The team's going to be last place without Garoppolo.
They're going to be in last place even if he starts games.
Well, that's the thing. See, that's the thing. It's a question of, are they going to be 6-11 or are they going to be 3-14?
And 6-11 doesn't really help you.
Tell that to NFL teams. Try telling them that. Try you call, pick up your cell phone right now. Call the Raiders front office. Tell them that. See what they say.
The part of the problem is people want their jobs, right? GMs want to keep their jobs.
Yeah.
Coaches, scouts, everybody, they're absolutely protecting their jobs by signing a Jimmy Garoppolo. Why? Because he's going to provide above replacement level quarterback play for a team that has talent. It's not like
above replacement level if you consider every quarterback that's on a roster.
True.
But he's certainly below replacement in terms of NFL starters. Aiden O'Connell should be the starter if they cut Garoppolo, and they would be the new Texans. This is so 2020 Houston Texans right here. It's just so, and then with Aiden O'Connell, he's got all these Davis Mills vibes for me. Davis Mills sort of resume where he had a good junior year, then maybe could have came out, didn't, went back to school, got worse, went day 3, but likely will be able to run an NFL offense. I think he'll be able to be competent as an NFL signal caller and game manager, similar to Davis Mills. This is so Texans what's happening right now.
And again, another solid dart throw in Dynasty. If you're in Superflex and just looking.
Superflex, yeah.
If you're looking on the scrap heap and looking for something, Aiden O'Connell could be something. I know people are excited. I mean, if you get startable games out of someone, they have value. That's really all it is. And there may be startable games from Aiden O'Connell in 2023. Maybe
I'd ask everyone to go back to the ADP board if you can access it from 2022. Go see where Davis Mills was getting drafted. That's the case for drafting Aiden O'Connell in Superflex leagues this year. But he's not a high draft pick. High draft picks have a lot of extra. Can you explain to the people why it's so important and it's so insular? It's so insulative to have that capital.
Basically, the more a team invests in you in terms of draft capital, most NFL starting quarterbacks are first-round draft picks. There's a reason. They get a much longer leash. The team has invested much more in you, and they get you for 5 years functionally if they pick up your option, plus potentially 2 franchise tags. Now, the NFLPA agreed to this. They're basically saying if you are a first-round pick, hey, Geno Smith, you got drafted into a horrible situation with the Jets. They get you for 7 years if they want to, and you have no ability to say anything other than, yes, sir. It's either do not become a multimillionaire overnight, or you are stuck with this team for 7 years if they want you. The further away you get from first-round draft capital, the less a team has invested in you, the easier it is for them to move on. Washington moved on from Kirk Cousins, but firmly, if you go back and look, do they move on from him if they had invested a first-round draft pick in him? We don't know.
We don't know. Yes, we know. The answer is no.
And I don't think they would have.
They would not have moved on. He would be in Washington right now. He would be their starting quarterback right now. If he were the number 1 overall pick, come on.
Yeah, and you're talking about this is exactly why people keep telling you over and over and over again, if Trey Lance is ever going to be a thing, it's going to be in San Francisco if he gets healthy. But the problem is he has not shown that yet. So at some point you have to accept that there are sunk costs, even in the top 10. You have to move on. The Cardinals did it with Rosen. There are extenuating circumstances where it is time to move on immediately. But the answers, the question that you're trying to answer is, can my quarterback win me playoff games because of purely him? Jalen Hurts has ascended to the level of a second-round pick that can get there. That is not common. Dak Prescott, 4th-round pick, has ascended to that level. That is not common. Kirk Cousins, we still have the questions about can he go do that consistently.
That's the thing. Pick. If he were a first-round pick, we would not.
Exactly.
We would be viewing him as the it quarterback from his particular draft class. And he, by his play, 4,000-yard seasons, would have only confirmed that. He would be viewed as the next Matthew Stafford, not as Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is his own unique enigma in the league because of his draft capital and the way he plays, his douchey face, everything about it. It's a very unique character in the NFL. But he would just be Matthew Stafford if he were a first-rounder.
We would talk about him the way that we talk about Matt Ryan if he was a first-round draft pick.
Or Matt Ryan. Same thing. He would be some combination of Matt Ryan and Matthew Stafford.
And then you look, if you take it one step further, the reason that Geno Smith potentially got opportunities that other quarterbacks would not have gotten is he was a first-round draft pick. And everybody forgets about it until you watched him in Seattle and you go, oh, he's that guy. I saw that at West Virginia. I remember when he was really, really good. I've chosen to forget everything that happened when he was a New York Jet because that didn't look like the guy that I saw at West Virginia. All this is confirmation bias. If he was a high draft pick, and we liked him once, we can love him again. If Zach Wilson somehow miraculously lands on a team,
stop it.
Someone's gonna fall in love. That's what happens.
God. He's Josh Rosen. He's Josh Rosen 2.0. And you gotta love Geno Smith having been through hell and back with the Jets and being kicked around the league. Now his weapons are DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, and Noah Fant.
Just hard to be more happy for a guy.
I mean, I'm so happy for him, and he's going to shred this year. He's an incredible value in fantasy in all formats. Best ball, Dynasty, oh my God, Superflex. Oh.
You know what no one's talking about yet, Matt, and invites are being sent out right now? Go look at what Geno Smith was in SFB last year and then add Jackson Smith-Njigba. And if you look at where he's getting drafted, that's one of the better values on the board, I think. Especially given the format.
He's the best value. I think there is every year in that format, guys like Kirk Cousins are values for the reasons we just talked about, as they weren't first-round picks. And then last year, it was guys that are kicked around the league, right? Geno Smith, Jared Goff. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
And
every year.
And then there's the guy that takes the year 1 to year 2 jump. Last year it was Lawrence. This year you're hoping it could be someone from last draft class. So there are trends that you can observe and know, right? If you had told someone last year that based on Justin Fields' stats alone from last year that he'd be drafted basically guaranteed at the 108 in SFB this year, people would laugh at you. But the situation's dramatically changed. And again, we've talked about this on the show before. There are positions where you can anchor, and then there are weak link positions. Offensive line is a spot where you'd rather have 5 average guys than 2 really good, 1 average, and 2 really bad. Wide receiver is a position where you'd rather have a super alpha, an average, and a below average. You're watching it play out live in front of you. DJ Moore changes everything for Chicago because it allows Mooney to play the 2 and Claypool to play the 3. This is how you go from, hey, this is a pretty quality asset in fantasy, it's Justin Fields' rushing floor provides, to, oh, there's also probably a ceiling that we haven't even come close to seeing yet.
Yeah. And by the way, you just inadvertently touted Kenny Pickett, just so you know. And I'm in these 2 QB and Superflex startups, and Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell are way too close. They're way too close because one guy is a first-round pick, one guy's a fifth-round pick. One guy has legit speed and was rushing for first downs every game last year, and he'll run for 5 touchdowns this year. Kenny Pickett, you can book that. He's got that wide receiver configuration you were talking about with the alpha and Pickens, and then the possession receiver and Deontay Johnson, and then, journeyman veteran or rookie field stretcher, whatever configuration of the personnel package you want to call, and Calvin Austin versus Allen Robinson. Then you go to Sam Howell, and he runs a 5.0 40, and he was hitting negative rushing yards one year, and then he has 800 rushing yards randomly because of the system. Was emphasizing quarterback rushing the next year, where you just have they're 2 totally different universes of quarterback in terms of Pickett versus Sam Howell, but most fantasy gamers see these 2 guys as pretty equivalent.
In 2023, you're having a discussion about Sam Howell. We haven't really seen him play.
Yeah, we haven't seen him play. We haven't seen him fail yet. We've seen what the Pickett looks like as a failure, and he's going to have some bad games again, but he's going to be better with the glove. I mean, the 2 gloves makes it tough. I understand the 2 gloves makes it hard, but Sam Howell is like 6'1", 2-0. It's not.
If you are
he's not an imposing physical player.
This is the same thing that we see from time to time. And again, this is also a reason that if people are going to give him away for free, Desmond Ridder is a value in 2023 because no one wants him. And, if nobody wants him, they become a value. For some reason, everybody's decided that Sam Howell is the value because of the receivers, which fair. No arguments here. Receivers are going to make a quarterback better, but we have no idea what he is. You're opening Pandora's box for no reason when you have a perfectly good value in Kenny Pickett there that we know has a rushing floor. We know what the receivers look like. We've seen him operate that exact offense with those pieces last year. He's only going to get better. And again, round 1 draft capital. They're not going to move off of him.
Correct.
Pittsburgh is not going to be bad enough to get a pick to get a quarterback that is significantly better than him, whereas Washington will likely have 4 of them, 4 opportunities to take a quarterback better than Sam Howell next year.
Wow. Think about it. Think about that. Think about what you just said. Same with Ridder. Ridder, same thing. You don't have any confidence who the quarterback's going to be. Washington, 2024. You don't have confidence, real confidence, who's going to be under center in Atlanta in 2024. But I can tell you who's going to be under center in Pittsburgh. It's going to be Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. It really is that simple. Doesn't have to be hard. Don't make it hard. Draft Kenny Pickett in these super flex leagues.
It's not sexy. That's Dynasty. What they don't like. It's not the sexiest pick in the world. And
his rushing ability is pretty sexy. And some of these throws to Pickens, the Pickett to Pickens connection, were sexy last year. So it wasn't without sex. There was some sex last year.
We saw it last year with Daniel Jones. All it takes sometimes is a different man calling the plays and a little reconfiguration of some things. And a guy that you thought had some potential shows you something that you didn't see before. He's absolutely a buy at prices that you're going to get him right now. And in startups, we're in 2 QB leagues, Matt. Where have you been seeing him go?
People think that he's terrible and that he's a total bust, and that because he wasn't efficient last year, which he wasn't, then that means it's over. That 1 year means, but Desmond Ridder wasn't super efficient last year either, and the other guy we're talking about didn't even play. Like Howell didn't play, so get out of here. So here's where I took Kenny Pickett, 709. So late 7th round. That is an incredible value based on our Superflex rankings. I can tell you that right now.
And he's going to be there at least through the end of that rookie deal. So even if you get a few startable weeks out of a quarterback that you took in round 7,
more than a few,
plus rushing upside, and that he's got 2 really good wide receivers that profile well. I mean, there were a lot of reasons to fade Pittsburgh at the value that they were seen as for the last 2 years. There's a lot of reasons to like them. As Billy would say, we don't hate any players. We hate their ADPs. Right now, a lot of
that was what I say. That was my quote.
And
I was actually quoted by Matthew Berry in an article with that line. And yeah, Pittsburgh is very post-hype. Very post-hype team. I think they're going to be much better than they were last year. Look at all these offensive line investments. First-round pick, offensive line. Big free agent addition, guard. This is what they needed to do. This is what we were talking about with the Bengals last year. Hey, they addressed their one need in the most all-in fashion, and you could also include tight end because they drafted like a 270-pound tight end.
My favorite part about those two in particular, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, is they replace players before they need to. That's why they're never in a situation like the Rams are, is because they keep that high draft capital. They don't give it away for players. As a matter of fact, they sometimes get it back. Chase Claypool, perfect example. Basically procured a round 1 pick for him.
Silly. That was ridiculous. By the way, with the Bengals, do you think that they should be currently shopping for a new receiver, a big clasher on the outside in the draft next year to backfill a Tee Higgins? Because I haven't seen a Tee Higgins extension discussed.
I think that they're waiting for Burrow, but I do think Tee Higgins' deal gets done. And once that's done,
I think it should get done, right? They're going to extend him. But they are waiting, though. This is the thing. The Bengals are usually one of these teams that they extend early or they don't extend at all.
Here's the really interesting conundrum that Cincinnati's going to be in a year from now. Burrow, Chase, Higgins collectively is probably going to be the first 100 million, 110, 115, I don't know what exactly the number will be, trio of players that all are on one side of the ball. Because you're paying, Jamar Chase is probably going to command 25 to 30 million.
Especially after he has a 2,000-yard season this year.
I saw that. And I don't disagree. I mean, it's him or Jefferson. They're in a race for it.
Yeah, they're in a race for it. And I don't think I would do it. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could. If I have what I want, which is Burrow Chase, I don't get greedy and also try to extend Higgins knowing that we have another side of the football we need to address in the defense. To me, extending Tee Higgins should not be a priority, though most teams do. Like you said, you draft a guy beginning in the 2nd round, he hits, so they hit on the flop with Tee Higgins. Early in his career, boom, it happens. 9 times out of 10, that guy gets extended. 29 times out of 30, that guy gets extended. So I understand the probabilities are they're going to extend him. That guy's almost always extended. But
I wonder if they break precedent a little bit in terms of what they do here. Make no mistake about it. The naming rights deal for Paycor was in advance of Burrow, Higgins, Chase contracts. They know that in order to play with the Clark Hunts of the world, you're going to have to spend money on guaranteed contracts. And I wonder if they will bring the value on a Higgins deal down just a bit and guarantee more of it so that they can kind of spread that throughout the rest of the team and give Chase the top end deal, right? Jefferson's going to get extended soon when that deal is going to be silly.
But couldn't that deal hurt Tee Higgins in a way?
Yeah, of course. Because
see, that deal, I'm worried the Jefferson deal hurts Higgins in that now the Bengals are projecting ahead what they're going to have to pay Chase, and then all this investment into not just the offense, but the passing game, which is where you want to invest. This is where you want to invest. You want to invest in your passing game. I understand that. It's just a lot. It's a lot on a number 2 receiver who I think would command significant money in the open market.
That, and you've got to consider they just paid Orlando Brown Jr., both guards, free agent acquisitions, center. Like you're not, these guys are not rookies on minimum deals. You're paying a lot of money for the fireworks show.
What a mistake that is when teams overpay their number 2 receiver and the price is a degraded offensive line. That is such a terrible trade. I mean, the worst trade we know is to sacrifice the passing game for the running game. We know that's the worst trade. Okay, you don't want to do that. But another interesting negative trade-off are those that will pay their second receiver or tight end and at the expense of, our right tackle is terrible.
And it starts to happen quicker than you think. Buffalo is the perfect example where they paid Allen and then they brought over Diggs, and suddenly the 2 positions that, had been a really real value for them in years past. Now, if you're paying market value for those things, you have to find value elsewhere. This is what great general managing is about, solving problems before they're problems. If you have low-end round 1 draft capital and you're taking a promising guard or a center or a number 2 receiver that you think can replace someone long-term, you can do things like extending a left tackle, extending a second wide receiver. You can do those things, but only if you keep hitting in the draft on the positions that you have to replace mid to high level production with rookie production, because somewhere on your roster, you have to have value in your contracts. And if you don't, your roster starts to look like the Rams or the Saints really quickly, where you are relying so heavily on stars to be stars with no one behind them. You need injury luck to hit, and perfectly for you. You need everything to go as is. And the other part, going back to our DeAndre Hopkins discussion, time will forget that Odell Beckham Jr. was acquired the day before Robert Woods tore his ACL. They did that in advance. That's what you need to do if you want to continue to compete at a high level, is you find and isolate a weakness on your roster. They knew wide receiver 3 is a problem. What they did was they went out and got a wide receiver 2 to play receiver 3 and then needed him to be a 2 and won a Super Bowl anyway. If you solve your problems before their problems, Cincinnati said, we need an O-line. And they spent the money and they did everything right last summer. That was as good an offseason as we've seen from a team and a general manager that historically people have thought would not go out and make those moves. They make savvy moves like signing Mike Hilton, but they hadn't spent huge money in free agency on guard. They went out and did it. They went out and paid up for an edge rusher too. People forget about that. And then injuries bit them in the middle of their offensive line at the worst possible time last year. That's not bad process. That's bad luck. There is a big difference between getting lucky and having the right process. They had the right process and got unlucky. That's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it.
Incredible process.
Kansas City had the right process. Their entire offensive line gets decimated and they get wiped out by Tampa. again, not bad process. It's demoralizing, of course, because you know how much time, money, energy, effort, investment went into making all of this happen at the right time. You just got unlucky. It happens to the best of the best. You can't let luck determine how your process functions. And the worst teams get suckered into, well, this didn't work out one time, so we're not going to try it again. Which is why we preach all the time. If you're going to take a quarterback, really swing for the fences with said quarterback. It's why we loved what the Colts did with Anthony Richardson.
What if the Bengals deal Tee Higgins in a similar fashion that the Chiefs dealt Tyreek Hill?
You would have to consider that a win for them.
Right? I mean, isn't that like, couldn't you extend him and then trade him?
I think the idea there would be to let the other team involved handle the extension.
Okay.
Because you don't want to put that on your books at this point. And I still don't think that he will be dealt. But if someone calls offering 2 1s, that's a really hard deal to say no to, given what you have in Chase and given what you've invested in your O-line. That'd be a hard deal to turn down. This is going to be, again, one of the really fascinating things about understanding roster construction and how these teams are built is we've never seen this build before.
No,
not with prices for quarterbacks and wide receivers as the percentages of the cap that they are now. We've never seen a team built like this, period, where you have 2 $25 million receivers and a $55 million starting quarterback. We'll probably see it in Philly sooner than later when they have to pay Devontae Smith big money. But
yeah,
Cincinnati's really going to be the first exercise in what that roster build looks like. And that's really fascinating for a number of reasons, because I don't think, no matter what you and I say, I don't think they're going to trade Tee Higgins just because they've seen what life without that guy is like, and I think they'd much rather have him than not have him.
I know that, I'm sure the Chiefs wanted Tyreek Hill. They just won a Super Bowl without him. And Tyreek Hill was more important to that offense than Tee Higgins is.
He's a much better real-life football player than fantasy value also. Tee Higgins is a remarkable.
Think about the alternative, right? Bengals have been great at getting value. Think about Irv Smith for $5 million. Incredible value.
Basically free.
Right? You have players that want to come play with you if you're Joe Burrow, right? What's better, having a quality right tackle, let's say, and a Gabe Davis or a Josh Palmer type but not even Gabe. I would say not Gabe Davis. Wouldn't you rather have a quality right tackle and say DJ Chark as your second receiver than have to make some compromise and say, okay, we have Tee Higgins and therefore we have to, start this 4th rounder at right tackle and hope for the best after you've just paid Joe Burrow an insane amount of money? It doesn't make sense to me, Anand. It doesn't make sense. Tee Higgins is a luxury.
They're in a very unique case. And that's why Cincinnati is such a fascinating team. One, if you were to build an offense to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes in Kansas City or to go toe-to-toe with Allen in Buffalo, this is a lot of what it would look like. You have a supremely accurate, tough as nails, mobile. He's not really going to run for a bunch of yards, but he's very mobile in the pocket. Quarterback that can deal with an offensive line that's decimated. We watched him do it in 2021. Now, you don't want to put him in that situation, but we've seen him and the core of this team do that in games that mattered over and over and over again in 2021. The question is basically, do we think that a right tackle has more value to what Joe Burrow can do on offense than having a true number 2 like Higgins? And I honestly, I don't know, because they're a very unique case. Burrow being able to deal with the offensive line that they had in 2021 is completely uncommon. That's unheard of. It really doesn't happen. We saw what happened when Mahomes' line was decimated in the Super Bowl, and even he looked human for a second. So I'm not suggesting that you ever put someone in that position. But the way that Higgins, Chase, Boyd together work as a unit and cause matchup nightmares for everybody is almost impossible to replicate with the second number 2 with a different guy, simply because their skill sets fit together so well. It's so ideal that they play the roles that they play.
And what are you going to do? You're going to replace him with Jonathan Mingo in the draft? Jonathan Mingo isn't half the player that Tee Higgins is.
That's the thing.
So that's the other thing is like, it's actually easier to replace the right tackle at the end of the first round than it would be Tee Higgins, because who's going in the end of the first round? Zay Flowers, Jonathan Mingo, those are the players drafted where the Bengals typically draft, and you're better off going tackle there. You're better off going lineman. So now I've come all the way around, full circle. Now I'm back saying I bet they better extend Higgins and draft O-line in the draft over and over and over again. It's hard to find great receivers in the draft. Just ask the Patriots. They've been trying for decades to do it. So that's a bird in the hand situation where, like, you know what? I think we could pretty easily draft, in some cases, the best right tackle, the best guy that's going to end up moving to right tackle slides to pick 21, 22, 23. Literally, the guy that ends up being the best right tackle in a draft goes early 20s. That's a very attainable pick. I know Tee Higgins was an early second rounder. That was a moment in time. Yeah. And players like Tee Higgins just aren't coming out of college anymore. Period. That's another issue.
You cannot find another one. If ask a team that tried to go out in free agency this year and sign a wide receiver. Odell Beckham Jr. is making $15 million. He did not play a snap in 2022. And I love Odell Beckham Jr. What? if that's where the free agent market for wide receiver is, and you're betting on yourself to hit in the draft, how many picks are you going to have to throw at somebody until you get another Tee Higgins?
It'd have to be 2 firsts. I think you're right. They're going to have to give up 2 firsts in order to get Tee Higgins, any given team.
And first of all, if I'm another team, I don't know that I'd pay that price.
So I don't think it's possible. I think we're at an impasse. They're going to end up extending him.
I think we're at a situation where it's in the Bengals' best interest, it's in Higgins' best interest, and it's in other teams' best interest not to pursue him with 2 firsts, where it's a very unique situation where this deal gets done. Because
any trade talks involving Higgins would eventually reach an impasse and therefore fall apart.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty safe bet that he'll be back in Cincinnati under some kind of low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 deal. I think he acknowledges that they need Jamar. I think he knows Burrow is going to get paid, but I think they will do right by him. And I think there'll be a little more guaranteed money there than anyone saw coming, because I think that's how they take care of him.
You mentioned that, the Justin Jefferson deal is going to ultimately impact Tee Higgins. I was also interested in whether you think the Lamar Jackson deal ultimately impacts like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. It is interesting, the knock-on effects of one deal helping to set the market for the next deal is also interesting.
Yeah, every deal that we see now, especially quarterback and wide receiver, when you are a premier, when you are top 5, as we know Justin Jefferson is, we know Jamar Chase is, we know Burrow and Herbert are.
We know Herbert is?
I think so. I think
close.
So. Yeah, if he's not, I mean, he's worth whatever the QB market deal of the day is.
Top 6, top 7.
We can argue. As long as you're in the top 8, you're going to make that whatever it is money.
Top 8 is safe. He's safely top 8.
So I think whichever one gets extended first is going to get the more team-friendly deal. Just because, again, you have another data point to compare something against where Justin Jefferson's deal is going to be inked into the sky. Nobody has any idea how far Minnesota is going to go in order to sign him and what that number is going to be, because it is going to be a record-setting non-quarterback deal for sure. There's no doubt about it.
I love that he's going into it knowing Like, everybody knows. The Vikings know. Jefferson knows. Everybody knows. We're going into this with a record.
Yeah. It's going to be the biggest non-quarterback contract ever handed out to an NFL player. I have no questions about that. And then the following year, it is more than likely that the Bengals are going to have to do business with Jamar Chase against that deal, which will either be we're going to get as close as humanly possible and add some guarantees, or we're going to have to surpass it. The same thing is going to happen with Burrow and Herbert because we have, again, 2 more data points of contracts of Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson that we didn't have before, that have been inked and have been signed, that they can go look at as evidence of, hey, I went to a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson's never gone to a Super Bowl. Or if you're Justin Herbert, you're sitting here saying, you know, there are maybe 3 guys on planet Earth that can make some of the throws that I can make, that can carry rosters like you've asked me to carry rosters with, you know, Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton when Allen and Williams haven't been out there. They're going to get well in excess of what even we think right now. I think it's going to be beyond a Hurts deal. I think it's going to be beyond a Lamar Jackson deal. And the last one is going to be the most expensive. So I would look for Burrow to get extended next, because we know Spanos is not worried about the money. Whatever the number is, he'll pay it. But the Bengals have to be a little more fiscally conservative if they can be, only because you're talking about Burrow and Higgins in the same year and then Jamar Chase 1 year later. That's a lot of guaranteed money to dish out.
Doesn't this money have to be held in escrow by the Bengals?
It does. And there is a check date and a final date. So basically there is a check that happens on January 31st of every year. And it is basically, did you give out a guaranteed contract to a player within the prior 24 months? And then that money has to be put in escrow by the 31st of March of that same calendar year. So the way that some people have gotten around this is, if you offer the contract to a player in February or March, there's no check date for that year. So when Lamar Jackson's guarantees go in, the check is going to happen January 31st, 2024. And Steve Bisciotti will not have to put money in escrow for the future guarantees other than the guaranteed money at signing until March 31st, 2024.
This matters because the Bengals are one of the least liquid franchises in the league.
Yep. And I think that's why you've seen discussions go on, because there may be a situation where they try to spread Burrow, Higgins, Chase over a 3-year window if they can, but I don't know that that's going to be possible. I think it's going to have to be Burrow, Higgins at the same time, and then Chase 1 year later.
When you're looking at comps, though, for Burrow, isn't the Mahomes contract a better comp than the Lamar Jackson contract?
Yeah, simply because Mahomes got a commitment from Clark Hunt and company saying, hey, you're going to be here no matter what. This is just numbers on a page, because they have the ability to modify that contract anytime they want and convert money to signing bonus, as they should. It's given the Chiefs incredible flexibility. It's given Patrick access to cash that basically no one's ever going to see in a lifetime. I mean, how many people have seen $400 million? It's not a lot. But you could do this. They could go the same route that Kansas City went. But again, that requires putting significant guaranteed money in escrow. Are they willing to do that? Do they want to do that? Or do they potentially bring him back on a 3, 4, 5-year deal and accept that at some point we're going to have to rework this deal for him and put more guaranteed money down, which I think is the more likely option. But again, Mahomes' deal is going to be reworked too. All of these super long 4 or 5 years deals are really 3-year deals where there isn't much guaranteed into year 4. The player's going to want more guarantees. The team's going to move the cap number as much as they can, change it to bonus at signing, change it to a roster bonus, whatever it is they want to do. But again, no matter what the contract looks like, Burrow's going to be a Bengal. Herbert's going to be a Charger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We know that.
It's just a matter of what a number on a page looks like, and it's going to be expensive. I mean, you're talking about one of them is probably going to be the first $60 million a year quarterback.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting contract that Mahomes signed. $2.5 million base salary in 2024, 2025, and 2026. And the roster bonus just escalates from $38.9 million to $49.4 million. Then it starts to flip back, where in 2028, he's going to absolutely want to restructure his contract because he's supposed to take less money, right? Is it less money? It's crazy. Like, he goes from a cap hit of $62 million in 2027 to $44 million with less cash in 2028. That's not going to happen. Every year you're going to want to make more and more and more money, assuming that his play, continues to at the highest possible level. So the question is, do they restructure prior to 2027 when his cap hit will be $62 million? It looks like that's the date that's been circled, where it's like, okay, this is the year the base salary starts to go up. The cap hit is enormous. We're going to have to restructure to bring the cap hit down in 2027. So I believe that really Mahomes' deal is through 2026. They're going to have to reschedule and restructure it for to lower the cap hit, but then also to pay him more money. So you can do both. Yeah, it's like, hey, we're gonna kill two birds in 2027. We're gonna pay you more and lower our cap hit at the same time, baby.
I think they're also going to do that. They could be done this offseason, could be done next offseason, whenever they really want to do it. Because, again, they know he's going to get the top of the market deal. They're going to guarantee a lot of it. They're going to do this same roster bonus versus base salary game again so that they can get cap flexibility whenever they need it. It's brilliant on all sides. But, again, it's because we know that he's worth that money no matter what. The GM and the coach fully believe in him, and the owner knows that's a quality investment. Cincinnati just doesn't have the money like that to do that all the time yet.
10 years. It's a 10-year commitment they're making to Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, crying out loud.
I mean, and Cincinnati is eventually going to get to the point where the team brings in enough money that this isn't a problem anymore. But
so what happened is Mahomes' agent said, I'll accept this wacky low base salary, all roster bonus structure because I know that Patrick Mahomes is that good, and you're giving us a 10-year commitment. So for the 10 years, you want to go 10 years, we'll do this wacky structure. But if you want to go 5 years, like Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson, well, you're not going to be able to get as creative. That's the trade-off, right?
Yeah, the agent's Lee Steinberg, too. I mean, how many number one overall picks has he represented? It's not like we're talking about, some guy down the street in a shady box suit and tie. It's one of the more unique contracts in NFL history, and I don't think that we'll see anything like it for a while. Because
the Patrick Mahomes contract.
Yeah, the Mahomes deal is kind of
the Mahomes deal. When you look at it, it's like so.
It's kind of hilarious.
It's so funny. It's really funny. So super agent. It's just so super agent. It's like, okay, some agency with 17 lawyers came up with this.
And the funniest part about it is, it reads as this 10-year deal, and really it's going to be a series of 3 or 4 year deals when it's all said and done, like the rest of them. But we get super excited about it, and it's
Mahomes wanted to win for social media. He got it
right. Oh yeah, he got $500,000, guys. Like, we did it. It's fun to put out there. I can't deny when the huge numbers float across the screen. It's always fun. It's like, oh, so and so got $300 million, and now we're talking about NBA role players getting that kind of money. It's just ridiculous. How much, I was looking at something for an NBA contract the other day. It's just ridiculous. With these contract numbers are so high at this point. We're talking about money that would have bought franchises in the 90s, and now we're handing it out to wide receiver twos and role players in the NBA.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on playerprofiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks. Our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.